Storytime about how a side chick showed up to my house only to find out that I was also a side chick. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Finding out there was a second side chick made me vomit. You might just hate me by the time this story time is over, but hear me out. I'm 27 years old and I live with my parents. When I was 19 years old, I was SA'd. More specifically, I was raped. This basically turned me into a hermit. In other words, I could not leave my house and I could not be alone. My parents did their best to help me out. They even got me therapy, even though they actually don't believe in therapy. And thankfully, therapy did help. After about 3 years, I was able to go out on my own and I was able to get a job. I started hanging out with my friends again, and I even decided to go back to school. This meant I was constantly busy. I actually landed a pretty good job, which meant that I was making some money, and my parents asked me if I wanted to move out. This to me was like my worst nightmare. There was no way I wanted to live by myself, but I appreciated the fact that my parents knew it would be the best thing for me. I actually did end up moving out for like 2 months, but I ran straight back home after one night I heard somebody knock on my door and then they were gone. My parents, of course, accepted me back into their house, and since then I haven't left. A few years after that, I graduated from school and I wanted to open up my own little business. My best friend and I went ahead and started our own business, and it was pretty successful. We were making cakes and a whole bunch of different things, and we basically catered to private parties. During this time, I started meeting a lot more people. And I also started getting hit on by a few of my clients, but I never went for anybody. My parents tried to convince me to open up to somebody, but I just couldn't. It was almost physically impossible for me to do that. Obviously because of my history, but also because a lot of these guys were super forward. They didn't care I was catering for their party. They just wanted to get my number right away. It obviously turned me off, so that was not going to happen. But one day I show up to a catering job and I meet him. And he is so polite, so sweet, and such a gentleman. But there was only one problem. He was married. Now, I'd love to tell you that his wife was a bitch or that she was mean to him or something like that. But nope, she was perfectly sweet and really beautiful too. After catering the party, he actually got my number because he needed to pay me. And this is when things just started happening. He asked me a question about some of the cupcakes that we served. I shared a recipe with him, and after that, it was almost on a weekly basis that he would reach out and ask me something. Eventually, it went from him asking me things to asking about me. And at first, I was definitely questioning why he would ask me things, but my mom told me that he was probably interested in me. And as bad as it sounds, yes, he was married. My mom was encouraging me to talk to him. I think at this point, my parents were just so desperate for me to find somebody that they didn't care if he was a married man. His wife and him actually used my catering service again, and I was able to see him after a few months. During the catering event, he took it upon himself to help me and my friend. He helped us unload the car and helped us in the setup. It was after this that he reached out and asked me if I wanted to get a coffee. I went, and then my life changed. He basically opened up to me and told me that he was really unhappy in his marriage and that for the first time, he was feeling something for somebody. Me. I know it sounds terrible because he's married, but for the first time, I was feeling something for somebody after so long. I didn't want to just let it go. When he asked me if he could see me again, I said yes. And we became friends. And after that, we became lovers. He also became my best friend. And he also gave me the confidence to start doing more things on my own. Other than my parents, I never had anybody encourage me to do anything on my own. It made me feel like he had my best interest at heart. Months are going by and I'm falling more and more in love with him. After a while, I asked him if he wanted to be honest with his wife about our relationship, and he said no. He said that if they ever were to divorce, that he would lose a lot of money. And he also had kids and he didn't want to hurt them, so I just let it go. This is when I started noticing that he was acting strange, and he stopped trying to see me every single day. He started seeing me about 3 times a week. Then one day, a girl shows up to my house. Young and pretty like me. In fact, she looked a lot like me. He obviously has a type. She knocks on my door, and as soon as I open, she starts yelling. Then she tells me that she's seeing my boyfriend and that I need to break up with him because she's in love with him. At first, I thought she was confused. I was convinced she had the wrong house. That is until she pulled out her phone and started showing me pictures of them together. Pictures in compromising positions. My stomach started to hurt so bad I actually had to sit down on the floor. This is when she realized that I had no idea what she was talking about. But that's when I let her know that I was also a side chick. She simply walked away and said nothing to me. I obviously grabbed my phone and called him right away, but he didn't answer. And she asked me if I want to go with her to talk to him. I was like, sure. I couldn't believe he had a second side chick. I wasn't special anymore because it meant that everything he was doing with me, he was also doing with her. We show up to his place, but nobody was home. He finally messaged me 3 days later. He said he went on vacation with his wife and forgot to tell me. When I confronted him about the second side chick, he said that she was lying. Then I told him I saw all the pictures. Then he said that he would break up with her and stay with me. He even promised that he would leave his wife. At this point, I don't believe anything he says. But I'm so in love with him, and because of my history, there's no way I could ever be interested in anyone else. Should I take him back? I feel like I have no other choice. Storytime about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women, and all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? Storytime about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women, and all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? My boyfriend confessed that he thinks I'm ugly. Here is the long requested update. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he told me that he would not marry me because he didn't consider me as pretty as I should be, I started asking him what he would change about me. Can you believe he sat down on his phone and made a list? An actual damn list. First on his list was, I was too heavy. He told me I needed to lose at least 20 pounds. I figured that shouldn't be too hard, so I got on a diet. Then he told me he preferred my natural hair color, which is brown. So I stopped dyeing my hair blonde and went completely brown. Oh yes, and his last request was that I get lip filler. He said that my thin lips have always bothered him. Then he told me I should look at more makeup tutorials to figure out how to do my makeup. Then he told me that I should tan in the sun to get some nice color on me. I know you guys want me to break up with him. What if I make all these changes and I'm actually healthier and happier? Not just for him, but for me. Since I last spoke to you guys, it's been about 2 weeks. I've only lost 2 pounds, but I'm on my way. I ended up getting lip filler and I love it. My lips look pretty but not exaggerated, so it actually looks nice. I also got Botox and cheek filler even though he did not request this. And to be honest, my face looks a lot better. It actually does like my new hair though. And I started sitting out in the sun, although I will start fake tanning because I do not want to get wrinkles. Mostly because Self-Care Sister told me not to, and I trust this girl. Since making all these changes, he's actually been a little bit nicer to me. In exchange for me making all these changes, he's spending more time with me and going out less with his friends. He's even taking me out on dates twice a week. Before I started making all these changes, I was always trying to look like something I wasn't. I was obsessed with being blonde and contouring, and he basically begged me not to contour anymore. So I asked Esther to do a tutorial for me, which she said she's gonna post. I feel like all he really wants me to do is focus on my self-care, and I'm totally willing to do that. I'll have to keep you guys updated, but so far so good. I did get myself a trainer, and he actually got jealous, which I think is a good sign, right? Self-Care Sister out. Story time about how I got fired because I told my boss that I loved him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time instead of me on Instagram. Around 2 months ago, I started a new job. It was a CrossFit gym, and all I had to do was check people in before class started. One of the female owners of the gym ended up hiring me, but I didn't realize that she had a husband. Let me tell you, when this man came to the gym, I nearly fell off my seat. Not only is he the owner of the gym, but he's also a model. Like a legit published model. Then I found out that he was married to the woman that hired me. Being the bad bitch that I am, I knew that that was not gonna stop me. I have a not so little confession. I have dated about 3 married men in my past. I know it sounds like a lot, but married men are the best. They give you money, they take you out, and they keep it a secret. So there's just like no hassle when you date a married guy. So I came up with a plan. It was pretty much just to flirt with him, and let me tell you, he gave it right back to me. Girl, I am just as shocked as you are. I thought it was gonna be harder to get him to warm up, but nope. Slowly I realized that he started scheduling me on the days that he was there by himself. He was just giving me the vibe, like, you know the vibe. So I started waking up extra early to do my hair and my makeup and look absolutely fabulous when I got to work. Not only only that, but I also started bringing him in food. I knew he loved protein smoothies, so I was taking him a protein smoothie almost every single day. And I would just happen to bring extra lunch with me, and I would offer it to him, and he loved it. This was the perfect excuse for us to sit down together and have lunch every single day. And then we got into him complaining about his dear wife. Now, let me be honest, I didn't know where things were gonna go with him, but I definitely wasn't expecting him to start complaining about his wife so soon. This is characteristic of a man that wants to cheat. A little backstory on the wife, she is a ball buster. She also kind of has a short temper, which kind of scares me. By the end of my second week there, I knew I had him in my pocket. But then he had to go away for a shoot, which meant that I wasn't gonna see him for 2 weeks. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I got fired for telling my boss that I loved him. Part 2. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. That's when he went away for 2 weeks on a business trip, and I was so sad. And that's when I realized I was in love with him. Like, truly, madly, and deeply. And I only knew that because I wasn't flirting with anybody else. I was only thinking about him and waiting for him to come back. So during those 2 weeks, I took advantage and I started going to the gym every single day. I mean, I worked there, so I started working out like crazy. He happened to mention that he loves girls with abs. So I basically went on a 500-calorie deficit, and I was pretty skinny by the time he got back. I would not recommend this to anybody because it's absolutely treacherous. I love food and I was always in a bad mood until he came back. The next time he saw me at the gym, I looked phenomenal. He walked up to me and said, "Oh my God, I missed you so much and you look fucking amazing." I melted into a puddle. The following day, he and I both opened the gym together, and of course, I brought him his favorite smoothie, and he asked me if we could catch up. That's when he asked me if I had been dating anybody while he'd been gone. The fact that this man was already jealous after not seeing me for 2 weeks let me know that he was vibing me just as much as I was vibing him. So I did the logical thing and I said yes. He looked at me dead in the face and said, "Why are you gonna date somebody when you have me?" I was so shook, I actually didn't know what to say, and he laughed. Then he said, "Oh, you know, I'm just joking. I'm just messing with you." And I said, "No, you're not. You actually meant that, didn't you?" That's when we just both stared at each other without saying a single word. I actually thought he was gonna kiss me, but he didn't. Then he confessed that he was so attracted to me that he didn't know if I should stay working there. I told him that we could just simply stay away from each other so that I wouldn't have to quit. He said that that's not gonna work for him because he actually wanted to see me and talk to me all the time. After that, I could tell that he was mustering up the courage to kiss me or to do something, but he was scared. Go to part 3. Story time about I confessed to my boss that I loved him and he fired me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. After he confessed his feelings for me, I could tell that he was just trying to be close to me like all the time. He would find any excuse to touch my arm or my shoulder or my neck or my hair. And I was super flattered. By the way, I'm already in love with him at this point. All I was waiting for was for him to actually kiss me or to make the first move. Then I noticed some weird stuff happening between him and his wife. Do you remember that they both own the gym that I work at? Well, she started coming to the gym in the mornings when he was supposed to be there. So every time I would bring an extra protein smoothie and an extra lunch for him, I would have to hide it from her. That's when one day he asked me if we could meet up at an undisclosed location. It was pretty much just an empty parking lot, and I went into his car and then we talked. He confessed to me that he was having an affair with somebody else from the gym, and that this person was starting to go a little bit crazy because she saw him and I flirting. He told me that this woman was crazy and that she might even tell his wife about us. So basically he wanted me to not flirt with him anymore and that maybe we could see each other outside of work. But that even that would be too dangerous just in case she was following him. I asked him to tell me who it was and he gave me a hint. He said, "She's the really loud one." Immediately, I knew who he was talking about. It was one of the current gym members who comes to every single class with her husband. I could not make this stuff up. Then he basically told me straight out I needed to not speak to him at all at the gym, and that if this woman ever came up to me and asked me anything, I needed to just play dumb. To be honest, I actually got scared at this point because he told me that she was dangerous and crazy. So we both actually started acting like we didn't know each other. But the thing was, he wasn't trying to see me outside of work. He always kept saying that he was too busy or that his wife couldn't find out. So I wasn't talking to him at work at all. And again, this just solidified the fact that I was totally in love with this man. And then I found myself extremely jealous at the thought of him having an affair with this other woman. Not just that, but one day I walk into the office and he's full on making out with his wife on their desk. I felt totally betrayed and lied to. This whole time he's talking about how much he hated his wife, but then he's making out with her. And the woman that he was having an affair with was coming to the gym all the time and always grabbing on him and pulling him. I was jealous and envious all the time. It actually got to the point where I couldn't do my job because I was always aware of where he was and who he was talking to. Finally, we both show up to open the gym one day and we have some privacy. That's when I told him that I was really jealous and that all I wanted to do was be with him. And then the words just came out of my mouth. I said, "I love you." He looked horrified. He looked confused and angry. Then all he said was, "I have to fire you." Then he said that he couldn't have me around because I was too much of a risk. risk. I literally begged him not to fire me, but he said no. I even tried to take it back. The next day, he gave me a $3,000 check and told me never to come back. I drive by the gym every single day just to check up on him, and I'm still totally obsessed. My friends actually think I'm going crazy, but I'm just in love. Should I just forget about him, or do I have hope? My girlfriend left me on my birthday to go be with her guy best friend. I, female 22, and my girlfriend 22. We both came out at the same time, and we were actually best friends before we came out. The reason why we both became best friends was because we both knew we were gay, but we didn't really tell anybody, but we knew each other was gay, if you know what I mean. We've been together for 6 months, and everything has been actually pretty good, with the exception of her guy best friend moving back to the city. When I met this guy, I knew right away that he has feelings for my girlfriend, especially when he gets drunk. He gets super handsy with her. Obviously, I told my girlfriend that I didn't like him around her at all, but she put her foot down and told me that I had no say in it because he was her best friend. I basically didn't bring it up again, but they would hang out all the time, and they were always together by themselves. They never invited me to go along with them. My birthday was coming up, and her and I had already booked a little cabin in the woods. We were very excited about this, but then she slowly started to ask me if I wouldn't mind if her best friend joined us, and I told her I didn't want him to be there. It was my birthday, and I was paying for the cabin. You see, my girlfriend's really broke, so I basically pay for everything. Then she threw a tantrum and said that I was being controlling and that I didn't want to let her have fun. Then she picks up the phone and calls her best friend to complain about me in front of me. Part 2 is up. My girlfriend abandoned me on my birthday so she could go hang out with her guy best friend. Part 2. After I told her I did not want her best friend coming to my birthday getaway, she threw a tantrum, called him, and complained about me in front of me to him. I was actually so hurt that I grabbed the phone and hung up. She looked at me and told me that I had no right to take the phone from her and blah, blah, blah. That's when I broke down into tears and asked her point blank, do you have a crush on this guy? Immediately, she said no. But then she told me she had a confession. She proceeded to tell me that they both lost each other's V cards to each other, and that's why they were so close. And that because they're trying to work on their relationship, I should let him come to my birthday trip, the one I'm paying for. I asked her if she had feelings for him once again, and she said no. And then I asked her if he has feelings for her. This girl just stayed quiet. Then she had the gall to say, what if he does? Is that really that bad? I actually had to explain to her why that would be a bad situation. Finally, my birthday comes around and she is nowhere to be seen. I was waiting for her in my car to drive to the cabin with her. An hour later, after she's supposed to be there, she sends me a text saying that she's gonna stay with him and that hopefully this distance will make our relationship stronger. Instead, I took my whole family to the cabin and now I'm ignoring her. Now she's been calling me nonstop. I took her not showing up as a breakup, but she wants me back. What should I do? Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a 27-year-old male. My girlfriend is 33. We started dating 2 years ago. A couple of months in, we started talking about marriage and she sounded really open to it. My dream has always been to get married and have kids. I never thought I would fall in love this hard. I have dated girls before, but I have never put in this much effort. To tell you that I took her to meet my parents 2 weeks after I met her, and even after 2 years, I keep falling in love with her. I'm really close to my parents and I decided to tell them that I wanted to marry her. They told me to go for it. So I planned a very elaborate proposal. I even got her 2 best friends to help me. I hired a photographer, a videographer, and I got the type of ring that I knew she would love from Tiffany's. The day of the proposal, everything went perfect. She showed up looking absolutely beautiful. Her friends were hiding behind a bush, and the photographer and the videographer got everything just at the right time. But guess what the problem was? She said no. She told me that she definitely didn't think we were ready for marriage or even to be engaged. This is a fundamental flaw. I don't agree with her. So 2 weeks later, I proposed again. And guess what she said? Part 2 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. It's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. And her and I went to lunch. All she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me, and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not going to walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. That's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why. His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time, and my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?